Hey everybody, hope you're doing great today. In this video, I'm going to provide some tips to prepare for a recession. Now, there is a question whether we are in recession or not. There's been some claims that we are in recession. Other people saying we're not in recession. I did do a video about whether we are in a recession or not, and I will share a link about that video above. So feel free to check that out. The short of it is, my opinion, I don't think we're in a recession just yet. The GDP is still going strong. The unemployment numbers are still pretty low. The labor pool is pretty strong. There's still a high demand for people to go out and do work. Even though we've had some layoffs from tech companies, those are kind of just the tip of the iceberg. I think, especially as we're heading in full into that recession, then the layoff number is going to go up, the unemployment rate is going to go up, and then we'll start seeing other issues with the economy as well. So here's an example. This is an article from AP News published in January 10th, 2023. World Bank says recession is a looming threat for a global economy. So not only just a recession in certain sectors, certain areas, but the world as a whole. We are much more intertwined these days with other economies. So when one economy gets cold, one economy gets sick, then that has a tendency to spread to other. Here's another article also published recently, January 13th, 2023. Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, some of the largest banks here in the US, they predict a mild recession coming. So timing-wise, we don't know. It could be the end of this year, it could be 2024. So regardless of when we have a recession, there are a lot of people predicting that we're going to have a recession. We did avoid a recession pre-COVID, kind of during COVID, with a lot of the stimulus, the tax cuts, tax stimulus bills. So the fact that we did avoid a recession in the late 2019, early 2020, with all the stimulus and a lot of the things that were done in response to the COVID crisis. So the thoughts now are a recession is coming. So what do we need to do now to prepare for a recession? So ultimately, when a recession hits, we don't know. There's no exact science for that, unfortunately. But the fact that there are plenty of experts out there saying, hey, we're about to enter into a recession, then it is helpful to get prepared for a recession. I don't know if there's been any recession in the past where people have been as prepared as they could be as the current predicted one is going to be. So with that, I'm going to look at from two different perspectives. One from the W-2 wage earner, somebody who's got a 9-to-5 job, as well as a small business owner.
So why do we care if there's a recession coming? We care because our goal is to profit from it, get out of the way, make sure we don't get hit, we don't get knocked down, that we're ready to rebound when we come out of that recession. Take this analogy. There's a bunch of us on a football field. There's a quarterback, an all-star quarterback on one side of the football field. That quarterback has a great completion rate. They know how to throw the ball. They got a strong throwing arm. And their goal is to take a quote-unquote recession football and throw that football and try and hit people in the head on the other end. So that recession football, if you get hit with that recession football in the head, it's probably going to knock you down, take you out of the game. Our goal is, my goal especially, is to catch that football and run it in the end zone for a touchdown. Now, some people will be happy just dodging that football rather than getting hit in the head. Other people will be totally unaware when that recession football comes. They'll get hit in the head and they will get knocked out. So we obviously don't want that. We want to grab it, run it in the end zone, and make it a positive. So as a W-2 employee, one of the first things I would do is make sure my debt is paid down. Any high interest debt, whether you have credit card debt, you've got high interest car loans, any other type of revolving credit that's high in interest rate. Some of these credit cards can run in the 20% plus interest rate. That's eating a lot of your budget. So as best as possible, pay those down. Building up a savings account doesn't really matter at that point because you're not making that money. At most, you're getting 3-4% interest savings on a savings account. But on the other side, you're paying 20%, 25% interest rate. So there's a big difference over there. So pay that credit card debt down, pay those car loans down. You're not paying 20%, you're not paying whatever the high interest rate is. Then once you get to that point where you've paid all that debt off, that's when you can start building an emergency savings fund. Everybody should have an emergency savings fund, 6 to 12 months. That should be enough cash to pay for your mortgage, your rent, your utility bills, your car payments, your food bills. So everything you spend in 1 month, you should have 6 months of that, at least 6 months of that total, to get you through a rough time. If you've been in a job for a while, my recommendation is to stay in that job and don't do a lot of job hopping. What happens with those who job hop especially during a recession time when those layoff numbers start to increase. It's usually the situation of the last in, first out. So you were the last hired, it's very easy for them to put you out first during a round of layoffs, especially if you're still in a probationary period. A lot of companies have that 1 year, 2 year, whatever that probationary period is. You haven't cleared that probationary period, it's easy just to lay off those people first. Now is the time to make sure your resume is up to date, update any of your skills, get additional training. If your employer is offering additional training, if you have opportunities to do outside training, get those training done, get it done now, update your resume. That way, if worse comes to worse, you do need to find another job, your resume is updated, you've got updated skills, and employers who are looking for those types of skills, those types of employees, you'll be first on the list to get hired.
Not only that, make sure your network is up to date. Basically, are you out there networking? Talk with your peers, talk with other peers in other companies. Make sure you're mingling, make sure you're keeping in touch. That way, if you do happen to get laid off at a particular job, reach out to some of those people. That person is a manager at a certain company. You can go ask them, hey, do you have any openings? Do you know anybody who has any openings? If the worst comes to worst and you do get laid off, then you need to start working your network, talking with all your contacts, sharing your resume, letting them know, hey, you're looking for a job, this is your experience. If you don't know anybody who's hiring, please let me know who else I can talk.
If this video has been helpful to you so far, please hit that like button, that way others can find it. On the small business side, if you are a small business owner, so the things you need to start doing is start paying down debt. If you've got a lot of debt, whether you've got debt on equipment, you've got credit card debt you use to fund your business, you need to start paying that debt down as soon as possible. That way, if there is a crunch due to recession, your cash flow starts to shrink, at least you can weather that better than versus someone who still has a high debt load. They've got a lot of money going out the door to pay for these debts, and they're not getting enough money into their pockets. Small business owners also need to be ready to pivot. Take, for example, a small business owner who happens to own a liquor store. Now, with that, let's say, for example, they sell mainly premium alcohol, premium wines, whatnot. So during a recession, people are going to start downshifting. Alcohol is one of those things that happens to be recession resistant, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to be buying the high-end stuff all the time. They're actually going to start downshifting. They're going to buy the cheaper alcohols. So as a small business owner who happens to own an alcohol store, for example, you want to do the same thing. Rather than being known as the premium brand, selling the premium brands, you might want to start bringing those discount brands in, maybe start in a small section of your store. But once the recession gets full on, that's the time when, so a lot of your customers are going to be trading down. So if you have those options for them, they'll keep coming to your store, versus if you're just selling high-end stuff, it's not something that they want to splurge on right now, then they will look elsewhere. For the small business owner too, depending on when your lease is up, you need to consider your rents. Especially those small business owners who have a lease renewal coming up soon, chances are the owner of the building is going to try and push those rates up because the economy has been going strong. They want to increase their rents, they want to increase their cap rates on their property. So you need to work as best as you can to make sure that it doesn't get too high for you. So during a recession time, that doesn't mean you'll be able to pay those rents, even though you can afford them now. Best bet to make sure you can keep it as low as possible now. Now, the owner of the building, whoever's leasing to you, they're not going to accept an excuse of, hey, it's a recession is coming, it's quote unquote, we don't know, so I'll keep your rates low. You might have that case occasionally. It's not going to be the case in most situations. So it's still best to keep it low as possible and use other reasons for that. If your cash flows are already starting to slow down, take note of that. And you might have to shop around. You might have to go to look at other locations. What are their square footage lease rates? And how do they compare to the current building? Check similar locations, similar neighborhoods. If they are lower, trending lower, then use that as your excuse. And if worse comes to worse, you might have to push and say, okay, I'm moving out because the rents are too high over here. This building has a good deal, so I'm going to lock in rates over there. So both W-2 workers and small business owners, the best bets are to pay that high interest rate debt down, build up a savings account. Even as a small business owner, building up a savings fund to help you through the lean times is a great idea. 6 to 12 months, same thing, you need to cover your lease expenses. If you have employees, you need to cover your employee expenses. Any other expenses you have, healthcare, whatever your deductions you're paying towards payroll, as well as buying your raw materials. Whatever you're buying, if you're a restaurateur, you've got to buy your raw foods, you've got to buy your spices, whatnot. You need to have enough expenses to cover those for the period, at least 6 months, 12 months, ideal. That way, if the economy does slow down due to a recession, you still have funds to keep you going, keep your employees working, and ride out the cycle. So it does not make sense for either the W-2 wage worker or the small business owner to build up that 6 to 12 months emergency savings funds as long as they have high interest rate debt. Whatever that high interest rate may be, debt on equipment, debt on your real estate, debt on credit cards that you use to fund your business or use to fund your lifestyle, start cutting back. Start taking a look at your monthly budget. What's your income coming in? What's your outflows going out? And start looking where you can cut expenses. Cut things you don't need. If you have certain things like subscriptions for advertising, for entertainment and whatnot, whether you're a small business owner or as a W-2 worker, if you haven't used those services in a long while, get rid of it. You don't need to pay that monthly fee for something you're not using. Small business owners too, one thing to look at is your advertising expense. If you're paying a lot of money for click ads on Facebook, Google, whatever, you can look at cutting those back and look at free options, especially during a recession time when you need to start cutting back on those things. Looking at where you can do it for free, all those websites, all those platforms allow some sort of free advertising. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do it best. Talk with your SEO person, talk with your advertiser, see if they have any options. Start learning about it as well too. With business in general, you need to understand a lot of facets of the business. During the rich times, it's great to hire a lot of that out. During the lean times, some of that stuff has to come back in towards the owners, and the owners need to start doing that themselves.
Another suggestion is to lower the risk in your investments. So whatever you're investing in, whether it be stocks, real estate, something else, you want to go from high-risk investments to low-risk investments. That way you can save that money. When there is a recession, there's a lot of those high-risk investments have a tendency to come down. If you already shifted from a high-risk exchange-traded fund to a low-risk exchange-traded fund, you're going to save yourself some loss in value over there. Same thing if you're investing in business, if you're investing in real estate, whatever the investment is, look at where you're investing. Particularly in real estate, if you're investing in high-risk neighborhoods, recessions have a tendency to hit those neighborhoods, and things can change on a dime. Versus you're investing in A-grade neighborhoods, B-grade neighborhoods, you're likely to be safe. Your investment's likely to be preserved during a downtime, and then when we're back in the expansion phase, it'll expand. So when it comes to the home you live in, most situations it's best just to leave things as they are. Assuming you still have your job, you can pay your mortgage. There's no reason to really sell unless you already had a plan to sell. If you had a plan to sell to move back with family, then it might be a good time to sell prior to getting into the recession, versus during a recession you might have a harder time selling. Being closer to the family, if worse comes to worse, you do get laid off, you'll have more support over there, so it makes sense to move closer to family. Or if you're changing jobs, you want to sell your house, buy a new house in the new location, that might make sense. You don't always have to sell too if you're moving away. If the local rents can pay your mortgage, still get some cash flow out of it, you still make some positive money out of it, then that might be fine to do. Just realize also during a recession, rents do have a tendency to go down as people lose their jobs. They will move out from a place they can no longer afford, move in with friends, family, whatnot, so then that has a tendency to put downward pressure on the rents. But if you have enough cushion in that rent, the amount of rent you can charge for this house, plus any expenses, plus any management fees, and still pay for your mortgage, then it might make sense. But that depends on your strategy, that depends on your risk, desire to take on that risk. That's all I have for this video. What are your thoughts on preparing for a recession? Do you have any different ideas on how you would prepare? Did any of the ideas I shared with you, do they make sense to you? Feel free to drop your comments, your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you could, please like, subscribe, and share this video with others who you think will benefit. And thank you again. I'll see you in the next video.